You can see it without even trying. The brand new luxury sedan with temporary plates sitting in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant because the person inside spent their entire monthly budget on the lease payment. The designer belt, the logo sunglasses, the watch that costs more than everything else they are wearing combined. A decade ago, this was something you might notice once in a while at a nightclub maybe, or outside an expensive restaurant on a Friday night. Today it is everywhere. Your coworker, your neighbor, the person ahead of you in the grocery line splitting a $40 order across a buy now pay later app. But when you look past the performance and into the actual financial data underneath it, the picture is not impressive. It is alarming. American credit card debt crossed $1.27 trillion at the end of 2025, the highest number ever recorded since the Federal Reserve began tracking it. The average household carries over $11,500 in card debt alone. And 49% of Americans now describe carrying revolving credit card debt not as a crisis to address, but simply as a normal part of life. Something fundamental broke in the relationship between what people display and what people actually own. This is the story of how that happened, why fake rich became an entire cultural identity, and what the people quietly building real wealth are actually doing instead. Start with the machine that made all of this possible. 20 years ago, the only lifestyles you compared your own to were the ones you could see directly. Your neighbors, your coworkers, maybe a handful of celebrities on television. Your reference group was small and grounded in reality because you had context. You knew the guy with the expensive car also worked 70-hour weeks. You knew the family in the large house had 2 incomes and a mortgage that stretched them thin. That context kept comparisons honest. Social media eliminated that context entirely. The average person now spends somewhere between 2 and 3 hours every single day scrolling through feeds filled with carefully constructed wealth. Vacation photos where the credit card statement is cropped out of frame. Car reveal videos where the 6-year loan term is never mentioned. Shopping videos where the return receipt is filmed the following day but never posted. And here's what makes this a machine rather than simply a habit. The algorithms reward the performance. A post showing a luxury purchase generates more engagement than a post about contributing $500 to an index fund. Conspicuous consumption produces clicks, shares, comments, and attention. Quiet financial discipline produces nothing. The platforms are structurally designed to amplify wealth performance and make financial responsibility functionally invisible. The result is a distorted sense of normal. When you scroll past hundreds of people your age apparently living a lifestyle you cannot afford, your brain does not stop to calculate the statistical probability that most of them are financing the performance. It simply updates its model of what a normal life looks like. And suddenly, your completely reasonable life feels like a deficit. That feeling of inadequacy is the engine driving every pattern that follows. The luxury industry did not simply benefit from this cultural shift. It engineered products specifically designed to exploit it. The accessible luxury market is now valued at over $125 billion globally. That is not high-end luxury. That is an entire category of products built to give people the badge of a luxury brand at a fraction of the actual price. The entry-level designer belt, the starter handbag, the fragrance or sunglasses with the logo prominently stamped across them. These products exist for a single reason. They allow someone earning $50,000 a year to walk into a room and signal membership in a category reserved for someone earning $500,000. The brand acquires a customer who would never purchase their real products. The customer receives a dopamine response from the status signal, and both sides pretend the transaction was about quality or craftsmanship when it was fundamentally about identity. Walk through any department store and the architecture of this trap is visible immediately. The least expensive items from the most recognizable brands are positioned at eye level near the entrance with the largest, most visible branding. A $300 wallet from a luxury house will display a logo 5 times larger than their $10,000 bag because the $300 customer needs other people to see the name. The $10,000 customer does not. Between 2019 and 2023, luxury brands generated over 80% of their growth from price increases rather than volume. They raised prices so aggressively that roughly 50 million buyers left the market entirely. But the brands were unconcerned because they replaced volume with margin. And for the aspirational buyers who remained, the gap between what they could genuinely afford and what they felt compelled to display only expanded. Perfume and eyewear are the fastest growing categories in accessible luxury right now because they are pure status signals at the lowest possible entry price. A bottle of designer fragrance on a dresser costs less than a car payment, but delivers the same social signal in the right context. The brands understand this precisely. They price these entry products to maximize the number of people who can technically afford them while maximizing the perceived status gap between the product and the buyer. This is the structural reality beneath the fake rich epidemic. Not individual vanity alone, but an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars that profits directly from people spending money they do not have on signals they cannot sustain. If social media created the desire and the luxury industry created the product, buy now, pay later created the mechanism. These services allow any purchase to be split into installments, frequently with no interest up front, which means the psychological barrier between wanting something and owning it dropped to nearly nothing. Over 90 million Americans used buy now, pay later services in 2025. Transaction volumes reached approximately $122 billion, and the growth is not decelerating. According to a Lending Tree survey from early 2026, 47% of users reported making at least one late payment in the past year, a number that climbed 13 percentage points in just 2 years. More than half of users admitted they could not make ends meet without these loans. Over 25% are managing 3 or more active installment plans simultaneously. The financial industry has a name for what this creates. They call it phantom debt, because buy now, pay later loans generally do not appear on credit reports. Other lenders cannot see how overextended a borrower actually is. Someone can carry 6 active installment plans, apply for a mortgage, and present a completely clean credit file to the bank. The debt is real, the payments are real, the visibility is zero. That is the infrastructure beneath the wealth performance. Someone posts a collection of new clothing, electronics, and accessories online. The comments fill with enthusiasm and questions about where everything came from. Nobody sees the 4 overlapping payment plans, the accumulating late fees, or the fact that 31% of users describe their primary reason for using these services as simply that approval is easy. Not that the purchase was planned, not that it was budgeted for, just that the friction between wanting and buying was removed entirely. 10 years ago, purchasing something you could not afford required actively applying for credit, receiving approval, and making a deliberate decision to take on debt. Today, you tap a single button at checkout and the item is yours in 4 payments. That reduction in friction changed the psychology of spending entirely. Here is a connection that rarely surfaces in conversations about money. The same financial system that instructs you to invest every available dollar, remain fully invested, and keep only 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash is the identical system that profits when you have no financial cushion. Consider who benefits when you carry no cash reserves. Financial advisors charge a percentage of assets under management, which means every dollar sitting in your savings account is a dollar not generating fees for them. Banks earn interest on deposits and charge fees when balances drop too low. Credit card companies collect 21% interest on every balance carried month to month. The entire infrastructure has an economic incentive to keep you fully deployed with just enough cash to avoid complete collapse, but not enough to provide real options. Meanwhile, genuinely wealthy investors maintain cash positions that would make most financial influencers uncomfortable. Research on high net worth households shows that investors with over $3 million in investable assets hold an average of 15% of their portfolios in cash and cash equivalents, not 3 months of expenses, 15% of everything. For the ultra wealthy, cash reserves regularly exceed 20 to 30% of total portfolio value. They are not holding cash out of fear. They are holding it because cash provides the ability to act when everyone else is frozen. When the market drops 30%, the person with no cash reserves watches their portfolio decline and waits for recovery. The person with a 15% cash position goes looking for discounted assets. Same market crash. Completely different experience. The wealthy also access their invested money without ever selling through a strategy called buy, borrow, die, using their portfolios as collateral for low-interest loans. They receive cash without triggering capital gains taxes. You sell investments when you need money and pay 15 to 20% in taxes. They borrow against investments at 3 to 5% interest and owe nothing in capital gains. Same general advice from the same financial industry, executed in entirely different ways depending on net worth. When you spend cash on the appearance of wealth rather than building an actual reserve, you enter what is known as the poverty premium. Not having cash on hand costs more money across nearly every category of life. Your car requires a $2,000 repair. With cash, you pay $2,000 and continue. Without cash, it goes on a credit card at 21% interest across 18 months of minimum payments, and that repair costs closer to $2,800. A medical bill arrives for $1,500. The person with cash offers to pay in full immediately, and hospitals routinely discount that amount by 30 to 50% because guaranteed payment today is preferable to months of collection attempts. The person without cash enters a payment plan that quietly adds 30 to 40% in fees and interest over time. A better apartment becomes available in a safer area with stronger schools. The deposit plus first and last month totals $5,000. The person with cash moves in. The person without cash stays in a more expensive situation long-term because they could not cover the upfront cost of the more affordable option. At the average balance of $11,500 and a minimum payment approach, someone carrying typical credit card debt would pay nearly $18,500 in interest alone before the balance is cleared, stretched across a timeline exceeding 20 years. That is the actual cost of looking wealthy, not just the money spent on the performance, but the compounding cost of having no cash when life arrives without warning. Two people, both earn $75,000 a year. Same city, same starting point. The first follows the script that fake rich culture teaches. He leases a luxury sedan because the monthly payment feels manageable in isolation. He purchases designer accessories through installment plans because each payment is small. He keeps his savings account thin because every available dollar goes toward maintaining an image that signals success. His social media presence looks impressive. His bank account tells a different story. When the car needs a $4,000 repair, it goes on a credit card. When the market drops and layoffs are announced at his company, he sells investments at the bottom to raise cash. When a rental property becomes available at 30% below market value during the downturn, he cannot act because he has no liquidity. He stays in a job he has grown to dislike for 3 additional years because he lacks the financial runway to make a change. The second person earns the same $75,000, but drives a car that represents a small fraction of his actual net worth. He wears ordinary clothing. Nobody passing him on the street would identify him as wealthy. He maintains 15% of his portfolio in cash and high-yield savings. His social circle thinks he is behind. When the same car repair arrives, he pays $4,000 in cash and moves forward. When the market drops, he purchases more assets at discounted prices using his reserves. When the rental property appears, he submits a cash offer, and the seller accepts 20% below what financed buyers were bidding, because a cash close with no contingencies is worth the discount. When he decides to change careers, he has 12 months of financial runway and takes the step. His new position pays $15,000 more annually. 10 years later, the first person has a net worth of $140,000. The second has $410,000. The entire gap traces back to one decision. One chose to look wealthy. The other chose to become wealthy. On the same income, they could not do both. The data on actual wealth accumulation in America is unambiguous. 86% of millionaires are self-made. They did not inherit their position. The average time required to reach a $1 million net worth is 32 years. Not 32 months, 32 years. And 80% of current millionaires did not reach that threshold until they were at least 50 years old. The average savings rate among millionaires is 23% of income. Nearly a quarter of everything they earn directed towards savings and investment rather than consumption. Compare that to the national personal savings rate, which hovers between 3 and 5% for the average American household. The people who build real wealth do it through decades of consistency, discipline, and the deeply unglamorous habit of spending significantly less than they earn. They are not posting portfolio updates online. They are not wearing the logo. They are not leasing the vehicle. They appear unremarkable, and that unremarkability is the strategy. Research on actual millionaire behavior shows consistent findings across decades of study. The typical millionaire household does not display extravagant lifestyle consumption. They live below their means, prioritize savings and investment over appearance, and maintain a clear distinction between income and wealth. A high income paired with high spending produces the appearance of wealth. A moderate income paired with low spending and consistent investing produces actual wealth. Those two paths lead to entirely different destinations over time. The fake rich epidemic is not simply a cosmetic problem. It is a structural transfer of wealth from people performing success to the companies and systems profiting from that performance. Every dollar spent on a status signal is a dollar not compounding in an investment account. Every installment plan is a commitment of future income towards something that will be worth less tomorrow than it is today. Every month of high interest debt is a direct transfer to the financial institution that designed the debt product. If someone directed $300 monthly towards status purchases financed at 21% interest over a decade, the total cost including interest exceeds $50,000. If that same $300 went into an index fund averaging 8% annual returns over the same period, it grows to roughly $55,000. That is a swing of over $100,000 from a single behavioral choice. Not a salary difference, not an inheritance, just a decision to invest what other people spend on looking wealthy. The person in the least luxury car with the designer accessories and the overlapping installment plans is not the customer of the luxury brand in any meaningful sense. They are the product. Their desire for status is being monetized by every company in the chain, from the fashion house to the payment processor to the credit card issuer, who absorbs the balance when the installments collapse. And the person quietly building wealth in the background, the one nobody would look at twice, is using the exact same income to construct an entirely different life. One where emergencies are inconveniences rather than catastrophes, where market downturns are buying opportunities rather than crises, where career changes are deliberate decisions rather than desperate gambles. The most valuable financial asset anyone can build is not visible from across a parking lot. It is the gap between what you earn and what you spend. And that gap is completely invisible to everyone except you and your account balance.